selfish and keep it to myself.
Well,
So we're going to do this via Zoom. Can everybody see my screen okay?
yes,
Okay, so we're going to go over the buyer agency agreement. We went over listings last time, so we're just going to fill out the form together. I'm going to fill it out, and as I'm going through, we're just going to talk about it step by step, and then we are also going to focus on agency relationships, and then also zip forms, because everybody asked, a class to how to utilize zip forms more. So we will do that. So we will get started. So on your buyer agency agreement, you'll see from the very beginning, line 1, you have to tell them who you are. Are you representing are you a buyer's agent, or are you representing a renter? So it's really easy. So you just highlight who you are. Obviously, we like to work more with buyers than renters. So you just highlight it. Up here in the top corner, you'll see strikeout, and bam. Now it's just chosen. You're the buyer's agent. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Purchase price range. This is just what you're shopping for. This is just ensuring that you've gone ahead and had a conversation with the buyer, what price point they're comfortable shopping in. This is just your way. It's kind of like a checks and balances under, hey, we know where we're at. So let's say we're lucky and we got a huge buyer and they're looking at 750,000 or below. Now always type in or below, so that way they understand that I'm not going to force them to buy a property for $750,000. Do I want it? More than anything, but just so that they know, 750 or below. All right, excluded properties. If you've gone ahead and picked up a buyer and they've already seen properties, whether represented or unrepresented, if they want to exclude those properties, this is where you would go ahead and put them in. The next one is with a prior agreement for an agent. So if they saw something with an agent, you can go ahead and put those there. So
excluded properties. Once you never put that in because you want to make sure you get paid for it, even if they saw it on their own.
That's correct. It's just like with the excluded properties on the listing agreement. If you're going to do the legwork and they just went to an open house, they just went to an open house. And that's where we just go ahead and explain that to them. Yep, you've seen an open house. You had a brief conversation. No agreement has been put in place, but that's where we also make sure we have that conversation for procuring cause. So if that agent has followed up and sent them listings and has been trying to go ahead and gain their business, this is where you use it as more like a conversation, like, hey, who have you been with? Have they been in contact with you? It's just making sure you're doing your due diligence. But you are correct. I don't put anything in there. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right, we'll move on to the next one, limited exclusion properties. If by chance they're like, no, I saw it with this agent, I told them I would buy it through there, you're going to put in a time frame. That's excluded until when? Are we talking 60 days, 90 days, forever? This is where you would go ahead and put in that date. The next line is compensation commission. So what are you going to charge them? In Wisconsin, our standard is 2.4%. I always put or what is listed on the MLS, because sometimes there are those agents out there who go ahead and do like 3% listings and only want to pay out at 1.5%. However you do this is entirely up to you. If you want the 2.4% and you show them a listing that's only paying out 2%, just make sure you're prepared to have that conversation that they owe you that 0.4% or whatever the deficiency is. And then for me, I always cover my for sale by owner. I charge 3%.
That's a smart place to put it.
You could have.
I know. I could have. Thank you for being honest.
No, I found a house on Craigslist.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay. So then other compensation, this is where your broker fee comes into play. So it is a commission. So we need to address it as a commission. So it is a broker commission, and we just put in there how much it is. $450. And this also is another way that, so sometimes we'll go to closing and they'll be like, what's that broker fee? We never talked about it. Well, not only did we address it on the buyer agency, we also had to sign this handy dandy form that says you're going to pay it. So there it is, $450. Thank you very much.
That's the question about that too. And I don't know if you'll know this or not. I was letting my buyers that had signed buyer reps prior to July be grandfathered in at whatever. But I feel like I got an email saying, nope, anything that closes after July 1st has to be the 450. Do you know the policy on that?
I'm right there with you. I was under the impression that it was anything that we had previous in the works, not previous in the works as in we just had a buyer agency agreement, previous in the works if we already had the contract ready to go. But I can follow up and find out.
I feel like at this point it's probably okay, maybe, hopefully.
I asked that question, but then they said, no, they'd be flexible with it.
Okay.
I have a quick question about commission as well. So obviously in the 2.4% or whatever is listed on the MLS, that's what the selling agency is going to pay us as the buyer agent. My question is, it actually personally happened to Jen and I, the for sale by owner, when you put that there, it doesn't really define who's paying for that. So is that something we should define?
Nope, because so when you look at it as a whole, when they go ahead and put their offer onto the MLS that they're going to pay a buyer representation of 2.4% or 2.7%, whether it be Minnesota or Wisconsin, the buyer is liable for that. And then on all of them, it says that funds come through, can a listing agent buy down what is owed by the buyer? And that's always yes. So technically, when you're going ahead and filling this out, that 2.4% technically comes from the buyer. However, there is a listing offer if you come to closing. The buyer is responsible for your commission, even though the listing agent pays it.
Okay.
I know you're confused.
Yeah.
Talk it through.
Can you see my face?
Nope, but I can hear it.
One is where you're off the hook as a buyer, because the firm is authorized to seek payment from the owner, the seller, or the agent.
That is correct.
So that's kind of where you're saying I get 2.4. If the seller's gonna pay it, you don't have to. But if a seller won't pay it, you owe it.
Then they are responsible for it. Correct.
Okay.
So this is where you have those conversations where there was an agent in the Hudson office many moons ago who charged everybody 3%. And he always asked for his buyers to come up with that additional 0.6% and pay that out of pocket at closing. It was something that he did. I don't know how comfortable any of you would feel about that, but the commission is your choice. How much do you want to receive? For me, I'm always like, well, we're just going to put it down as the 2.4% or whatever is listed on the MLS. That covers the buyer to not have to be responsible for any deficiency. So if we say 2.4% and we sell them a property where the payout is 2%, they're not responsible for that 0.4 because I've gone ahead and said whatever is listed on the MLS.
Okay. No, it makes sense. I think if I'm a buyer reading this, though, I would be a little hesitant if
Yep.
I mean, it's good that you're being honest and upfront, but I also, there's this notion out there that as long as you're a buyer, you're good. You don't have to pay for all this crap, basically.
Well,
And-
sure, and that's what we tell them all, like you get me for free,
Right,
but we're not entirely telling them the truth. They're getting us for free theoretically, as long as we're accepting the listing agent's offer of pay.
right.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, perfect.
Okay. Every other page again is usually definitions, earnest money. Anybody have questions on earnest money?
Nope.
Okay. Firm's duties and consideration for clients' agreements. The firm and its agents agree to use professional, knowledgeable, and skills and reasonable efforts within the scope of Wisconsin statute, meaning do your best. You're going to take care of them. It's fair and honest dealing. It's the very same as Minnesota's, what is it, that old car acronym? It's the same thing here. So then it says cooperation, and it's exactly that the client agrees to cooperate with the firm. So this boils down to, hey, I just walked through this open house and I decided to put in an offer with this other agent because I loved it so much because I didn't bother to call you. Well, it's all right in there that they've agreed to go ahead and cooperate with us. So that means you're getting paid. So then you get to go ahead and reach out to the other agent and say, guess what? We're under contract. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Disclosure to clients. Once they've gone ahead and signed this, you're working for them. So you're going to work to do your best to go ahead and represent them. Without the agency agreement, if you're walking into a listing, you're working for the listing agent. So just keep that in mind. Disclosure to clients means fair and honest dealing, skilled care. You'll give accurate information, market conditions if requested. So this is where it gets tricky with us. So we go ahead and we take unrepresented people into homes. Now we work for the seller, and where they're asking about your opinion of the market conditions. The only thing you can say is, well, the seller is asking for this. You have no opinion. So make sure that you fully understand that without this, you work for them. A duty to close material adverse fact. This is anything that affects the contract. Somebody loses a job, the insurance companies having issues insuring the property, anything that pertains to the contract is a material adverse fact and must be disclosed. And you want to disclose it. If somebody gets laid off and you're in the midst of a contract, you want to go ahead and get some goodwill from the listing agent. So does this make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Confidentiality, that is for life, not the life of the contract. That if we're holding trust funds or anything that the firm is responsible and pertaining to any contract they're under, it's our duty to go ahead and safeguard that. So that's where we would put it into a trust fund account. My favorite, negotiating. Yes. So you just want to make sure you're presenting it in an objective, unbiased manner, disclosing the advantages and disadvantages of the proposal. This really helps us out when we get into those cases where we have those folks who decide that the property is $50,000 overpriced. And we get to go ahead and have that conversation and say, well, while I appreciate your thought process here, the seller may not agree with that. So the firm has responsibilities as well. So it just means Keller Williams Select Realty has responsibilities to your client for negotiation if it's requested, like if they call the broker and say, hey, this agent's not working out so well for me, because as you know, the buyer agency is with the firm, you're just a designated agent. This can go ahead and change if requested. So they have the same duties, the material facts, that they'll fulfill the agreement, they'll negotiate if need be. Does that make sense? I keep leaning closer to my computer because I can't hear.
We're here, we're just quiet.
Okay. Multi-representation and designated agency. I don't know why this is confusing for us, but it is seems to be very confusing for Wisconsin. If you're a Minnesota agent, this is the same as if you are, oh gosh, now I can't even think about it. Well, does rack my brain. It just is a representation if you're representing both. So the thing to be clear on with this one is this is to a firm. So you know how Edina Realty is Edina Realty. It's Edina Realty, whether it's in Wisconsin, Minnesota, New York, it's all one firm. Where we are individually owned, it takes away a little bit of the pressure from us. So when you see on line 122, the same firm cannot represent both me and the other party. This does not take away all Keller Williams properties. It only takes away Keller Williams select properties, meaning that they don't want you representing both them and the other client within your firm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so then the next one up on 119, the same firm may represent me and the other party, but the firm must remain neutral regardless if one or more different agents are involved. Multi-representation relationship without designated agency. This means you no longer get to negotiate on behalf of your clients. You have to fill in the blanks and do what they ask you to do. They've now taken control of negotiations and you have no opinion anymore. You're just the referee.
Which
Nobody
one-
would anyone ever choose that right away though?
Yes, a lot of people choose it.
Which one is that again?
Line 119.
Okay.
Here, I'll highlight it. Whoops. Or I'll highlight everything.
So does Wisconsin assume that all real estate agents are 18 years old or what? This is the tiniest writing I've ever seen. It's unbelievable.
I know. I can see if I can make it bigger on my end.
But I mean, that's just the forms are all tiny.
Yeah, they are. They really are. I agree. All right, then the top one, line 117, the same firm represents me and the other party as long as the same agent is not representing us both. This is designated agency, meaning if I had a listing and you guys brought a buyer, we all maintain our negotiating power. Okay,
And that's the typical one that's.
it is. And this can be changed at any time. So obviously, if we're writing an offer on one of our brokerages listings, we also want to double check and say, hey, guys, do you have designated agency or not designated agency? So that way we can make sure that we're all on the same page and that we're going through and negotiating where we're supposed to be negotiating.
That's why I asked that question. I'm like, I always have my buyers check 117.
Yep, me too. Why would you ever give up your negotiating power?
So I can understand on the listing side why you would maybe want them to do 119, but why on the buy side would you ever start with that?
Because there are people out there who truly believe that the firm talks about both sides no matter what. So it's all about a comfort level. So if they feel like or had a past experience where they felt like they weren't represented and they needed to go ahead and take the reins, this is where this is going to come into play. It's all a trust issue.
Okay.
So we want to make sure that they trust us and then we trust them enough to say, we absolutely will be your referee. Just know that when you ask me these questions, I can't answer any longer.
And why would anyone ever choose 122? They really truly don't trust you?
right?
You
Right.
just say, I can't show you Keller Williams Select, right?
That is correct. So it was Keller Williams Select. So you imagine being at some of the other brokerages that are all one, they're one. That means they've just taken off how many houses away from their buyers?
And that makes more sense when you say Edina Realty is Edina Realty, like any Edina, that makes sense. But I'm like, yeah, there's so many of us little ones. Why would anyone, in our case with Keller Williams, do that? But
And
Exactly.
they should say that with Edina Realty, because all they do is pocket listings.
I agree.
They're gonna get us all sued again.
Yep, they are. All right, Jen, here's your favorite sub agency.
Still don't understand it.
Okay, so it's so much easier on the buy side. So you have a customer and they just don't feel comfortable signing an agency agreement with you. However, they want you to go ahead and represent them by putting in an offer. Now that they're a customer, you would need to make sure that you give them that disclosures to customers. So that way they have that verbiage, they understand that. But then they also fully understand that you are now working for the seller. So remember when we said that the firm will remain neutral? We are now neutral in sub-agency because technically we are working for the listing agent because your client, your customer does not want to become a client. You are now a sub-agent. You have, and it says right in here, a sub-agent firm will not, unless required by the law, provide advice or opinions to other parties if doing so is contrary to your interests. You're essentially just neutral. They're using you to go ahead and fill out the forms because while they don't trust you, they trust the listing agent less. It's essentially the way you would need to look at it.
Is this like a facilitator agreement?
It is similar to a facilitator agreement,
Okay.
but unlike a facilitator agreement, sub-agency, so you know when you're looking on the MLS and it says Wisconsin broker comp, sub-agent comp, this is where this comes into play. There are some listing agents who will not pay out a sub-agent. So you would need to make sure if you're ever going to be doing a contract in sub-agency, you want to make sure that your firm is going to go ahead and be paid. Otherwise, the customer, you would have to negotiate your fee with them directly.
Okay. So can I ask a question? Because it shows.
Yep. I know it's a crazy thing. I wish it would just go away.
I
You're
just have
fine or
somebody
you're
reach
not.
out to me and say, I found an off-property listing. I've pretty much negotiated everything with the seller, but now I don't know what to do. What are next steps? Should I be jumping in and saying, I'll do a sub-agency for you and do it for 1%? I mean, is this a facilitator thing?
It is very similar to the facilitator. You can totally go ahead and do that. There is a compensation form that you can fill out with a customer that says they're going to be required to pay. I use it for sale by owners, and I just cross out who their agent is because they're now representing themselves, and then they're going to pay me X amount of dollars to go ahead and facilitate this. Yep.
Because yeah, if we're not negotiating on anyone's behalf, we're just doing paperwork.
We're just pushing paperwork. Exactly. And a lot of times with a sub-agency, the listing agent will definitely be willing to pay a reduced commission because they get to keep the rest of it.
Right.
All right, confidentiality notice to clients. We are all super, super guilty of going ahead and not putting in our client's pre-approval letter from their lender because that is confidential information under Wisconsin's law. This allows you to go ahead and share that now.
Oh.
Non-confidential information is the non-confidential information. Oops, sorry, I have that in the wrong Sorry, guys, my brain is a little scrambled today.
That's okay.
So are ours.
No, I don't know about you guys. Bold was rough. I had to keep shutting off my camera because I didn't think anybody wanted to watch me sneeze until, you know. All right, non-confidential information is anything that they want you to share. Like if they're like, hey, I won the lottery and I want you to tell every single person that we write an offer on for, because maybe it'll help us get the house. Well, that's great. You know, they can ask you to share whatever. Just be mindful if they're like, well, yeah, we want you to share all of this information. There's some information that should just best be left not shared. You know, like if they won the lottery, you don't want your seller to come back and say, hey, since they won the lottery, we now want 50,000 more. Non-exclusive relationships just means exactly that. If they want an exclusive relationship, I always tell my folks, that's great. We're going to go ahead and tally how many houses I sell based on the month, and that's how much you'll be obligated to go ahead and purchase if you want an exclusive relationship. Non-exclusive just means that you have the ability to work with other buyers. All right, non-discrimination is easy. We just don't discriminate. Dispute resolution. There are means, if we can't come to an agreement, there are means that we can go ahead and enter into mediation, arbitration if necessary. The next one is property dimensions. And it's just kind of a little protection there for you. Just that they understand that all of the information that we're given is to the best of their knowledge, that there are agents out there who are going to head and round up or round down or count the deck as square footage, count all of their closets as square footage, which they totally can, but is it real livable square footage in your buyer's eyes? So just making sure that they understand that that is all approximate. And if they would like definite, you know, like how big is this room for real? Well, we can totally break out our handy dandy electronic measuring tape for them and let them see for themselves.
Can we go on a tangent?
Yeah.
What is considered square footage? Like, you're right, decks or not, because what's the like legal, it has to be covered, usable, has a.
No, they can count their decks, they can count their closets, which is crazy to me because I would never count a deck as livable square footage, but it is considered, it's attached to the house. You can use it for your own enjoyment. So it is technically counted as square footage. It's up to you whether or not you want to make sure that if you decide you're putting a property on the market, whether or not you want to go ahead and list and add that deck into your square footage. One thing you will hear from appraisers is they don't like it because according to them, that's not square footage, but according to real estate, it is.
And is there any differentiation between a 3-season porch and a 4-season porch?
Yeah, 4-season porch has heating and or air conditioning, and the 3-season porch has none.
3 you consider as part of square footage, right?
Yeah, you can count it. Covered porches are counted. 3-season, 4-season, an open air deck is considered countable. All of we never measure bathrooms, but that usually comes out on our whole house measurement for square footage, but.
It's to the outside wall, by the way.
Correct.
So like when you're measuring the inside rooms, you can add a foot.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is off.
Do we have a class on measuring? For real, I'm dead serious.
If you really want the full square footage,
Yeah.
measure the exterior of the house.
Okay.
Yep. Corner to corner.
I mean, I'll sit
Yeah.
down. We'll work it out for you. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's your finished square footage. Now you just gotta figure out, that's the total square footage. You gotta figure out what's finished and unfinished.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Get yourself
Yeah.
digital one.
Those aren't that accurate.
You don't think so?
I've tested them, but anyway, forget it. Sorry.
We digress.
I used to have my.
Okay, it's okay, because it's all good conversation, because this is why they put it in there, because everybody's idea of what square footage is going to be depending on what what is important to them. So adverse fact, that's anything that will affect the property. As we know, buyer is the buyer, client is hopefully your buyer, deadline is in calendar days, firm is the agency, interest in a property just means that they purchase it. Locating it, material adverse fact, we've already talked about this, but it shows up a couple of times in this contract. Negotiate the acquisition of the interest, of an interest in property. Person acting on behalf of the buyer. This is one that gets kind of tricky. So when you read it, it literally means the world. Because it says acting on behalf means a person joined in interest or otherwise acting on behalf of, including but not limited to immediate family, agents, employees, directors, managers, members, officers, owners, partners, incorporators, and organizers, as well as any and all corporations, partnerships, limited liability companies, trusts, and other entities controlled by, affiliated with, or owned by the tenant. It's everybody. Excuse me. So it's the same thing with the tenant. It is anybody who is a decision maker for the buyer. So if they got to call their best friend and their best friend is asking questions because their best friend is a decision maker in this property, you get to answer those best friends' questions. You know, it's just like when they bring in the whole family and we're like, oh, great, deal killer. They're protected. They're considered acting on behalf of the buyer or tenant, depending on where you are at. So be careful with that, because sometimes we like nod off and we're like, yeah, grandma, we know you love the wallpaper. But if grandma's decision is going to make or break whether or not that buyer buys, then grandma is acting on behalf of the buyer. Property, this is my favorite. It's in quotation marks. Does anybody know why it's in quotation marks?
No.
Nope. Because when you buy a condominium, are you buying the walls or are you buying airspace?
Airspace. Yeah.
You are buying airspace, which is why property is in quotation marks, because the condominium airspace is considered property, even though you don't own the foundation, the walls. In some cases, you don't even own the windows or the doors. So that's why it's in quotation marks. So just making sure that they understand what real property is. Real property means and can include airspace at that lovely condo they're in love with. Protected property. This is where you're going to go ahead and if it comes down to the point where your agency expires and they just want to take a break, you will still do just like you do with your listing agreement, print out a list of all the houses that you've seen. So that way, if they ever decide to come back and purchase one of those properties, that it's protected. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Rental agreements can be oral or written. So be careful if you're handling tenants. Make sure that you're getting everything documented, because if the landlord says, oh yeah, and there's going to be a $300 fee for pets, but it's not in their contract, it's still part of the contract because it was delivered to you. Lien notice. This scares every single buyer. It just says that the firm can go ahead and place a lien against them to go ahead and collect their commission. You see this more often in commercial real estate, not so much in residential, but you can still do it. So just know what's in there. Notice about sex offender registry. While we cannot stand on the street and point them out, we can go ahead and give them the means in which they can go ahead and find out who their neighbors are. Termination of the agreement, neither the client or the firm has the legal right to unilaterally terminate this agreement. Some pretty terrifying language, especially if you're not getting along with your buyer and you're like, I just want out. Just know it has to be mutual and it has to be agreed upon by everybody. Extension of agreement term. This is your protected list for 1 year. Rentals. I don't do a lot with rentals. I'm sure you guys probably don't do a lot of Wisconsin rentals, but it's all here. The rent range you're looking for. Any excluded properties with or without a prior agreement, limited time frame again, compensation, what they're going to pay you to go ahead and find them a rental. This one has a check mark for when your commission is actually due and available. It's not like with where you purchase the property. Obviously, you've done your job. You've written the offer. It's gone to closing. You've earned your payment. Where rentals, it's not so much the same as that. They get to choose. Payment by owner or owner's agent. So it's again, they're able to seek payment commission from the landlord's other compensation. This would still be your broker fee. Or any other fee if you're holding a retainer because you've gone ahead and looked at 30 rentals and they just can't commit. You could put that in there as well. An hourly rate. Delivery of documents and written notices. Fill it out. Fill it out completely. Who is going to receive documentation for your clients? If it's your client and their mom, make sure you put your client's name and their mom's name there. Firm's recipient for delivery, that's you. If you choose to use the fax, you can check that box. The same with commercial delivery and US mail. Just know that with all three of these with a fax machine, as soon as you hit send, it's considered delivered and your day counter is started. With commercial delivery and US mail, the second you place it in the mailbox, flip the flag or drop it off at UPS, that is considered delivered and the day counter is started. So use caution when using any of those three. This is why we typically tend to use personal delivery, which is defaulted, and then email. The email for the client. So if it's the client and their mom, it's their email and mom's email, and then your email for the firm. Does that make sense? I'm not even sure how to do that. Sorry, she just wrote me a note. If I increase the zoom size of my screen, I'm not quite sure how I would do that. Ah, hang on.
You can hit Control plus, right?
There you go.
Is that better?
Yes, much better.
Ooh, we're all paying attention now.
Becky, question for you.
Yes.
In the other brokerage, because of line 323, that with that in there, we didn't have to provide the amendment, whatever, D, electronic delivery. Does that not cross it out? Or, because I know we still have to do that for I think for KW Select.
It's
What's
not
your-
electronic. It's not addendum D because that's an antiquated old form for electronic delivery.
Right.
What you want to
Okay.
do is electronic consent. And there is
Okay.
one, there's a form for that.
Okay,
This does not mitigate that electronic consent. It still has to be signed that says,
Okay.
yes, they have the ability to
Okay.
go ahead and receive emails and open attachments.
okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you do not have to use addendum D.
Yeah, the other one then, yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. All right, additional provisions. This is just anything additional, just like in your offer to purchase. If there's anything additional that pertains to this agency agreement, you can go ahead and put it in there. Addendum, excuse me. The addenda, this is where you go ahead and put the KW addendum. This just covers whether they sign that addendum or not. So the one that says that they're going to go ahead and pay that broker fee of $450, we've addressed it. We've talked about it in the commission. If they decide that they're not signing it, it does not matter. This is now legally a part of that contract. Term of the agreement. Hopefully it's the first day you're meeting them that you've gone ahead and signed this contract. If they don't sign the contract, it can be the first day you started showing them properties as well. It's from whatever date you're starting to whatever date you are ending. This contract can be 1 year, 5 years, 6 months, however long you want it to be. The thing to note is that on line 336, it says the firm and client agree that this agreement shall or shall not end when the client acquires interest in a property, which means when they purchase a property. It defaults to shall if you don't check a box. So if you're working with investors and you do not check that it shall not end, if that's not your option, then you'll have to redo this buyer agency agreement for every single property you're doing with an investor.
And I hope I don't get myself in trouble with this question.
Yep.
Can we backdate the term of agreement? I mean, yeah, what if we showed them a house, we didn't have, I mean, does it, who uses this form and does it matter if it's totally accurate? Like, you
It
know,
does matter. That's why the first day of showing, because now you're jumping into procuring cause, which is why you've sent them properties, you showed them properties, which is why I always default back to the first day we actually showed properties.
okay, so that's okay to do, kind of to backdate it,
Yep.
kind of, but
Yep.
sign on the date you're signing it?
Yep, so then
Okay.
they're saying that now they understand that they're a client from, let's say it's in June, you started showing them properties in June. And they just make sure you say, this is gonna be from when we first started seeing properties, or if it makes you more comfortable, to today. You know what I mean? So it can start that day or back in June when you started showing them properties. I like to put it back when I first started showing them properties if they did not sign at our initial meeting, just simply so that way it's covered. And then those properties are covered as well.
Then, yeah, so then why does new construction have such an issue with that? I mean,
Because they're new construction.
right, I'm like, if you're showing them properties and then, yeah, they go out and buy one and you, I mean,
Exactly.
I can't ever buy
Their
or.
rules are fluid, which is why it gets frustrating working with them.
No, but that's why I ask, is that like illegal or unethical for us to backdate? Because, yeah,
Nope.
I mean, I've had clients where I have showed them and I'm like, oh, I forgot to bring the buyer up, but I'll send it to you, but we're gonna show this anyway and consider yourself under contract with me. And they're like, yeah.
Yeah, because when they date it, they're dating it for that date. They fully understand that, yes, they've entered into a client relationship. They just didn't sign the paperwork. I know, it's weird. But that's okay. We like weird.
Interesting.
So we go ahead and print their names. We date it the date they sign it, even if the date up top does not match. This one I get a lot of questions on, client entity name. This is if you are dealing with like an LLC or an estate. This is where the entity name would be the LLC. The authorized signature would be if it's an estate. So like Jen, I know one of your purchases is an estate purchase. So all of the seller signatures are usually on the authorized because they're not actually, they're the client, but they're the authorized client. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because they're not the owner of title.
What if you end up with like 5 people?
I know, right? And we have had that before.
Yeah.
Usually when we have more than one, anytime you adjust this contract, I mean, you can just go ahead and exit out. Sorry, the whole thing is, it's super huge on my end, so I can't see my little toolbar. So you would just highlight it so that it's client and just exit out entity name. The same with authorized signature. You could go ahead and exit this out, type in client. So whatever you need to do to go ahead and add. I have seen in some cases where people will put Bob and Jean Johnson and then have them sign on the same line. That works too, as long as we have everybody accounted for. And you are, the firm name is always Keller Williams Realty. Unless your name is Keller Williams, this is where you go ahead and put in your own information. So that is your buyer agency. Let's go back up to the top so we can spend a few minutes on zip forms. There all my stuff is. All right. Is there any questions before we zip out to actual zip form stuff that you have pertaining to buyer agency? Okay, we're going to go out to the main screen of zip forms. So for those of you who are currently using zip forms, when you log in, depending on where it shows up on your screen, there is the dashboard, actual forms, just brings up all of the forms here. Back. But more often than not, we're going to be in the transaction page. So this was the one that I was just in, the Wisconsin broker class. That's what I was just in. But if you create a file, it'll all be right in here. If you choose like, oh, I just need one form quick, you can go into any one of them, commercial listing buyer, and just quick fill out the form, print it to PDF or print it out on your printer, whatever works for you. Just when you're done in these base ones, that you're just deleting the form as you go, because you know the next agent might want to go ahead and use that form. A lot want to go ahead and create a file like you see here, you know, broker class, Clam Lake Drive. If you wanted to create a new transaction, you just simply click new. And then what is it? Is it a listing, an offer to purchase, a lease, or a lease listing? Let's do an offer to purchase since most of you do buyers. So then you're going to want to name it. And because there's so many of us using this same account, make sure you're using your client's name. You don't have to put in their full name, but something that you're going to recognize it with. Because if you just put the property address, and all of a sudden this thing starts filling up and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't remember which address I used. I don't remember which one I'm in. You could end up clicking through a lot. So the recommendation would be just to go ahead and put in their clients' names. So we're just going to be Joe Buyer. What's the category? Are we looking at residential, condominium, commercial, vacant land? More often than not, we're going to be choosing residential. You want to go ahead and select your template, and you'll see there's the one listed right there for Keller Williams Select Buyer. You just click that and you click Save. Now, all of those forms that we go over are actually in there, but on the first page that you'll see is the summary. You can go ahead and type in the MLS number, the unit number, the street address, city, whatever you want to go ahead and fill out. If you're like, I like the summary page, I like to go ahead and do that, you absolutely can do that. Offer date, expiration, it's all on here. Commission, I'll perfectly honest with you, I've never used it on this because we've got our own stuff for commission. And nowhere on the offer to purchase does it ever say, well, this is the commission we'll be receiving. So if you want to use the summary page, you're fully welcome to, because it will pre-fill in some of the portions of your contracts. The next one is parties. You can go ahead and put in everybody's name, who everybody is. If you're representing the buy side, that's awesome. You fill in all the buy side, but fill in the sell side too, because as we're going ahead and doing contracts, sometimes it's like, oh man, I just wish it would pre-fill in the listing agent. Well, it can. You just got to put it in there. Documents. This is where all of your contracts are. So we've gone ahead and selected the template. They're all right here. If there is something that you don't see, but you're fairly certain that there is a contract, you can, let's see, you can go ahead and add contracts. Sorry, I can't see it. I gotta make it smaller for a second, guys. So up here where it says all forms, you just click it, and then this is the list of forms for you. Everything that's highlighted blue is what's already in there. So you'll see that there's the addendum D that we don't need. Everything's in here. Blank addendums. If you use a blank addendum, make sure you're reaching out to me before you do so. Oftentimes we'll go ahead and create an addendum that already exists. So if you find yourself, you're like, I just can't find it, reach out to me. It might be hidden underneath a different name that we're just not seeing right off the top. Ooh, add that one. So it's as simple as that. You just click it and it goes right into there. So when you're all done, you can either scroll all the way up and X out of it, or you can just click outside of it. And then the one that you just added will always go to the bottom of the list. If you want to create a checklist, you can. Notes, the same thing. If you're going through and you're like, oh, I should probably remember this, you can certainly add notes. Just know that, excuse me, that when this transaction closes, I'm just asking you guys go ahead and delete the transaction, that it's done. It does have an e-sign option. You can use it, just know that I have this set up to go to the front desk. The front desk might have no idea why they're receiving this email for an electronic signature. For me, I would just rather go ahead and save it to PDF and use it through whatever signing service you like. Me personally, I like DocuSign. It's set up right there in Command, and we can just add all of our files right to our stuff right from there. Now, one of the questions that has come up is, how do we save it to PDF? It's super easy. You can click as many or as little as you want. You just click this little here that says save as PDF. You want to save it to your device. If you want it in separate PDF files, that's fine. You can do it in separate PDF files, or you can do one big single PDF file. If you save it to the transaction, it's literally going to go ahead and save that little portion in your transaction. See? But if you're like, oops, I forgot, I want to go ahead and save that as a PDF on my computer, you can. Easy as that. You guys are all so quiet. It's weird being here and not seeing your faces.
We missed your face too.
Any questions for zip forms? Wow, you guys are like, woohoo.
Maybe can you tell us how to add a template, or have you done that before? I mean, I'm not seeing my templates when I don't know, but anyway, how do you upload a template? Because we have some.
Because you have some.
We have some in Minnesota in
They're
transactions.
here. Yep. So we go back into transactions
Yeah.
and let's say, because this is yours, correct? King?
No.
No, that's mine. Sorry.
Okay. Well, we'll just go right back into Joe Buyer.
Okay, cool.
We're just gonna ignore that because I put it in there. So if you're like, oh my gosh, I put the wrong template, it says right on here, and it doesn't matter which screen you're in. Excuse me. As far as the summary and documents, you can apply a template right here. And this is where it's going to bring it up. So let's say you want to add it as a list, add the listing template. You can go ahead and apply it. And now all of those documents are going to be in there as well.
Yeah, ours isn't in there. Sorry. So I don't know if we are in our, we moved over from KWPR, so we have.
Oh, sure.
Forms, but
You
they
have your own zip forms.
signed into yours. Okay. So
you have your own zip forms. So if you want to make a template,
yeah.
you just go up here and select template. You're going to create a new one. And then it's where you can put in your listing or your offer to purchase. And then you can go ahead and start adding those documents in there. So that way, then every single time you're creating a new offer or a new listing.
Fantastic.
It's right there.
Yep. That's what I want. Okay.
Yep. So then when you log on, you just go right into templates right there. And it's just like when you're going ahead and setting up on the MLS when you're doing it through there.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to go ahead. I'll show you how to delete one. You just click it. Click the little three dots. We're going to delete you, Joe Buyer. Yep. Bammo. He's gone. It says 2 transactions have been deleted. And there's a retention period. Don't even worry about it. It's in a trash can. I can retrieve it if we need it, but it's always going to give you that warning. All right. Well, we've got 2 minutes left. Anybody have any other questions? Best practice notes? What you guys got?
It'll last for words.
Is this signature part, electronic signature part, is that difficult?
It's different. It's a little weird. If you're used to using DocuSign or AuthentiSign, you will not enjoy it. It's clunky. It's like AuthentiSign used to be when it was like, so you had to like do so many steps in order to get it there. It's very clunky that way. But
okay. Didn't we used to use way back when in Minnesota? Didn't we used to use that signing?
Wasn't it? Because I think this one is ZipLogix, I think is what it is.
Oh, I bet it was DocuSign, wasn't it?
Yep, I think it was DocuSign before DocuSign got good.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. If you need anything, message me, call me. I'm here for you. Just don't send smoke signals. I'm way over in Wisconsin. I cannot see them.
Thank you.
Before you go, can I ask you a non-related question?
Yes.
Call you later too. Do you know a good lawyer who does like boundary problems in Wisconsin? Like somebody in, I think Amory or whatever, but they're like, we have a problem with an easement and a neighbor that's encroaching and we need a lawyer. Do you have any good
Yep.
recommendations?
I would send them over to Lowberg's out of Ellsworth. They're real estate attorneys. Otherwise, Estreen and Oakland and Hudson, they're also real estate attorneys as well. Nick Vivian is who I believe Jared uses all the time.
Jared's given me him before. Nick Vivian.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
What was the other one? Extreme, what's that?
Estreen and Oakland,
Stream and Oakland?
Estreen. I know it's weird. Estreen.
Oakland, right?
In Oakland, Ogland.
Okay.
They're also a title company.
That was Nick Vivian. All right, thank you.
All right, well, that's our time, guys. Let me know if you need anything, and thank you so much for coming.
I'll be
Thank
calling you
you.
tomorrow.
All right, thanks, Mark.